So 11:01, you're late. What's up with that?
You can dock my paycheck.
Yeah, I will dock your paycheck. You know what? We'll just ask for more for Giving Tuesday. No, I'm joking. How are you?
I'm well. How are you all?
I'm pretty good. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm used to getting up around like 11 or 12 because of our UK volunteers and got a lot of people in Australia that I like talking to. So I don't know. I'm usually up by around now.
Yeah.
Eric, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get started? Uh,
Absolutely. So my name is Aaric Guerriero, and I am the director of the GLBTQQA Resource Center at Colorado State University. I have been here for 4 months, almost 5 months, on December 1st. Before that, I was at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, and I had the honor of being their founding director of their LGBT center. And before that, I was at Central Michigan University in a variety of roles, all in LGBT advocacy and social justice work. Professionally, I've been doing this all pretty much since 2001. So it's been a great time, and I'm really looking forward to the chat today.
all right, sounds good. Been with a lot of institutions then.
Yeah, so it's been three institutions so far.
Can you tell us a little bit about where you've been as far as Colorado State University goes? When did you end up there, and what have you been looking to do there?
Yeah, so I got here, and my official start date was August 1st, so it really hasn't been that long. But one of the things that really attracted me to Colorado State was that I really felt like, Colorado was a pretty progressive state, a little more so than Wisconsin. I was really looking forward to working with the local communities, and I think there's a lot of great stuff being done locally for queer folks, and so I wanted to be a part of that. And on campus, there's a number of folks who are really doing some fantastic work, and so I really wanted to be a part of that team. Some of the things that I'm really looking forward to creating here, particularly for trans youth, next semester we're looking at kind of putting together some sort of very, not necessarily a formal like support group, but much more so of an informal, like just social gathering, chat time with students who identify throughout the gender binary and whatever that looks like to them, and creating some space to make some connections. Also, I'm looking at starting a Safe Zone program in the next year. And for those of you who are not familiar, Safe Zone is a national program that many colleges and universities and local communities use as well, that helps and provides training and education for individuals to how best support folks kind of under the queer umbrella. For us, it would be particularly college students, so focusing on making classrooms safer, how can departments be more inclusive, and how can we change some policies and procedures that may not be inclusive, and start engaging folks in those greater conversations.
Wow, that's definitely a lot on your plate. So, what are the social gatherings mostly going to include? Like, are they just going to be like bowling nights, or are they going to be kind of hanging out in dorms on campus, or?
Yeah, so probably utilizing our center, our space, so our physical space in the Laurie Student Center, and doing, things like game nights, or, kind of having folks bring in, something like, maybe somebody has an activity they would like to share with the group that they would like to run, or or just, you know, a time where maybe there's something huge happening in the news and in the media, and we want to have a discussion about that and how that affects us as not only trans folks, but also folks who are in Fort Collins or in the Colorado area. And so creating some space like that. I actually have an intern that will be starting next semester, and he'll be running that, and that will be his project.
It's actually really cool. JJ, Jaden, do you have any like questions on that at all? Or?
That's just awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that is a ton of stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what did you do when you were actually in Wisconsin? What are kind of your personal beginnings? What other things have you accomplished?
So I'll kind of start back and work my way forward. I really got started doing this work kind of as a fluke. When I was a junior in college, I was asked to join so they called it the Office of Gay and Lesbian Programs, keeping in mind that this was the late 90s, and things looked very different. And so the name kind of reflects that. So I joined that staff, and it was just the director and myself. And 2 months after I was hired, the director came to me and said that he had gotten a different position on campus, and in order to keep the center running, I needed to step up and start taking some, you know, larger responsibilities in place of the director. And so that's how I got my start in doing all of this, and I fell in love with it, and I knew there was nothing else I wanted to do professionally. And so that's how my path really got started. So I spent 2 years as the undergrad student assistant at Central Michigan. Then I didn't know what to do with my life, so I went to get my master's degree, because that's what we do when we don't know what to do with our lives, continue our education. And so I did that, was grad assistant for 2 years, and then they offered me the formal director position. So total, I had spent from about 2001 until 2008 with that center in some sort of capacity or another. And then at Central Michigan, I also took the opportunity to be out, and I wasn't out at trans at that time. I, you know, was out as gay, and so things looked a little bit differently for me personally, but I noticed that there wasn't a lot happening on campus in terms of education. So I actually created my own educational programs to make up for the lack of things that I was seeing around me, which was a phenomenal opportunity, and I'm really glad I took those opportunities to do some of that, because it really set me up later for some professional success.
What things were you actually lacking on your campus, if you don't mind me asking?
Not at all. So a little background. So Central Michigan is in a small town of Mount Pleasant, which is either mountainous nor pleasant. It was a very, very white community. The population at that time was about 26,000 students on campus, and we only had a 4% student of color ratio. So that's pretty abysmal. When it comes to queer issues, I mean, we were even more far behind than we were on racial issues. It was just a different place. And so the student organization could actually not list their physical meeting location because of fear of people getting that location and, you know, kind of infiltrating the support group. And so that was, you know, a lot of fear of physical safety. In 2004, they had their very first drag show, and the administration was very against having a drag show on campus, and so that's why they waited so long to do that. And we had to have police escorts for all the performers to and from the location, and had to have police inside the location throughout the entire show because physical safety was such an issue. We also, my last year at Central Michigan, just 2008, there was a lot of anti-gay chalking that happened on campus during our Pride Week, and so lots of slurs and issues, things written all along throughout the main thoroughway of campus, and the university did not respond, and in fact, instead of approaching the hate language, they actually decided to make an anti-chalking amendment to the Constitution on campus, and so you can no longer chalk on campus. But nobody addressed the fact of these hateful things that people were saying, and that's when I knew I had to leave.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that you had to experience that. That definitely shouldn't have been good, especially being an advocate on that campus for so long.
Yeah, it was hard. I was also, personally a victim of some hate on that campus, and it's not to say they're not doing great work. They have a new director who is very successful, but that's when I knew it was time to leave for me.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Have you experienced anything like that on Colorado campus or anything recently?
I have not. Actually, my experiences in Fort Collins and in Colorado have been incredibly positive. There's a lot of support here personally that I've experienced. I was just telling a friend yesterday how thankful I am to have amazing health insurance through the university. I was paying about $150 every month for my testosterone in Wisconsin, and I pay $4 a month here. So I am very lucky for that indeed.
I think that $140 savings is definitely worth it.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
What would you say is kind of the general overall feeling on Colorado's campus versus Wisconsin's campus over the course of like the past 4 years or so? What would you kind of say is the atmosphere toward the community?
I think one of the major differences is that people are much more open and talking here. People are very committed to social justice here. Not that they weren't in Wisconsin, but it was very hidden. You had to find it, and people were not as visually and openly supportive of the queer community like they are here. And so that has really been a major positive difference for me.
One of our viewers actually does have a question using the hashtag TYCGivingTuesday, which you can use in order to communicate with us openly on Twitter. Or if you're closeted, you can also just send an email to transyouthchannel@gmail.com. And we'll be able to use those in order to ask Aaric any of the questions as far as that goes. Once again, try to be respectful as far as that is, but we'll get as many of them in as we can. JJ, what is the question?
Okay, well, this question came from a Facebook viewer, and it was a private message because they are closeted. It's kind of a personal question, so if you don't feel comfortable answering it, you don't have to. But were your parents supportive, like, going through all of this?
Yeah, so I was very afraid of telling my parents when I first came out as trans, because my first coming out didn't go so well. But luckily for me, my parents have been amazing. Their response, so I came out to them in a letter via email. My parents are in Michigan, and I was in Wisconsin at the time, and so seeing them face to face wasn't necessarily an option, or at least not on my timeline, and so I wanted to tell them sooner. So I wrote a letter, I emailed it to them. It took them an hour and a half to respond, which was the longest hour and a half of my entire life. But they responded and said, we don't fully understand, but we look forward to working with you, and nothing will change our unconditional love for you. And that was their response. And they have been phenomenal with my name change and pronouns. Pronouns have been more difficult than my name for them, but I understand that, and I'm willing to work with them. So yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Awesome. That's really cool. It sounds like you've had a fairly good and decent personal transition. Would you say that your social and legal transitions have gone as well, or what kind of things have you run into, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. The one of the largest issues, honestly, that's been probably the most difficult has been dating and having any sort of romantic life. And I was with somebody for 4.5 years. And when I came out as trans and expressed my desire to further my transition by starting testosterone, her response was, if you start testosterone, we can no longer be together. And so that was incredibly difficult. Probably something that wasn't expected. I was actually expecting a worse reaction from my parents or my extended family than I was from her. And so that was really, really hard, and something that's still, kind of a sensitive issue. And so, I think that's not, unfortunately, uncommon for trans folks. And so it's something that I wasn't expecting to really be a hurdle like it is. And so naturally, I'm much more shy to be out there and really start dating because of my experience.
Yeah. That's definitely really hard, especially when you come out and you end up losing a lot of that support structure that you have, those friends and those loved ones and things like that. I think that a lot of our viewers and especially our closeted community can probably agree because it's just one of those primary fears that we have. Would
Absolutely.
you actually recommend any specific advice to someone who's just coming out, especially someone who's planning to come out on campus or in high school or anything like that?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of the first things I always tell somebody when they're coming out is to have a plan, and that plan can look like a number of different things, but really work through any possible situation. For example, if you're coming out to your parents, think about, or if you're living with them, think about, where will you go if they don't have a positive reaction? Think about support for after you tell them and before you tell them. Maybe you have a close friend that could be in the room and they don't have to say anything, but they could just be there for emotional support for you, because that's what's really going to be very important. I also recommend trying to be as open with your family as possible, and not necessarily telling them details of what your transition is going to look like, but giving them information, because they might not be as knowledgeable as you are about some of these things. And sometimes taking the opportunity to help educate might make things a little easier for you. I also recommend, kind of thinking about the best case scenario. What if your parents, embrace you wholeheartedly, and what is that going to look like for you? And also having some support for yourself in those situations, to be able to have, those close relationships where you can turn to them, and either, turn to them for emotional support if it doesn't go well, or to be able to celebrate if it does go well. But surrounding yourself with people is very important, and I think that's where organizations like Trans Youth Channel can come into play, because you can have those support systems that exist for you, even if they're not right next to you.
Right. I can definitely echo that statement as well, and I think that both JJ and Jaden probably can as well when it comes to having that support structure already beneath you, people who are going to support you, and coming out to a community you know will be supportive in order to prepare for those that you're not so sure about. JJ or Jaden, I might want to echo this comment to you as well. What would you guys recommend to someone who's coming out on a college campus or in high school?
Well, it's kind of hard to give advice on that because my high school coming out experience wasn't so friendly. That's why I'm doing online school now. But I guess just not to be sorry if they do react badly. I mean, if they react badly, your first instinct would be to be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." Just try not to do that, because you don't really want to apologize for who you are. I mean, you might be sorry for their reaction and how they were brought up to think like that, but you're not sorry for who you are, so don't get those confused. But
Yeah, I agree with that, especially because here in Buffalo, Wyoming, actually, the smaller part of Wyoming, my high school was about Probably 300 people, so I didn't really have the best experience either. But honestly, I agree with JJ. Don't be sorry. You got to be who you are. You can't really be somebody who you're not, because if you act like you're somebody you're not, you're just gonna have a harder time through life, I think. And if you just say sorry for that, I don't think it's gonna be okay with yourself. Another thing, with my high school, a lot of people are really conservative and really religious here. And the problem with that being that a lot of them don't even understand what trans is here. So I guess just you got to explain to some people what that is sometimes, and you can't be really too afraid of sharing that, I guess.
Mhm. Kind of bouncing off that, Eric, what would you say are the most prominent issues you get from people kind of coming across your threshold? Do you get a lot of people who are newly coming out or are closeted looking for those resources before they do come out to friends or family? What are the most prominent issues you find people coming into your office with?
Definitely the coming out process. Usually, people are out to themselves when they come in, but are looking for some sort of support and help in coming out to others. And so there's some really great resources that we, kind of connect people with, making sure that they have that support. And so, whether it's finding support here on campus or finding support through our counseling center on campus, or finding support in the local community, or online venues. We really, we do a lot of referrals and referrals out to help people find that support.
Definitely. What I can say on behalf of Transy's channel, like a vast majority of our community, the 4,300 subscribers we have on YouTube, a large majority of the people that we have on Facebook and Twitter, and a lot of our communities, they seem quiet on the outside. But the thing is that a large majority of them are actually closeted. And there's just this entire process before they manage to come across to that proverbial threshold to their LGBT communities. And in many cases, that literal threshold. People are rounding the block several times a week. You probably see the same person come across the hallways like 4 or 5 times before they manage to get the courage or whatever you want to call that feeling to kind of cross that threshold. So I would probably say when it does come to being on a campus and trying to come out to yourself, it's a matter of kind of getting across that hurdle of this is something that I should be allowed to explore, not necessarily saying black and white, I am or am not. It should be coming at it from a perspective of I might be, and I can definitely explore this space in a safe area, get to know a lot of people in that community. And then from there, I'll probably have an encouraging nexus of individuals around me that will be able to come out. Would you kind of agree with that, Eric? What would you say is the process before that?
Absolutely, I would totally agree. When I was an undergrad, I used to call our center at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I knew nobody would be there, but I needed to hear that voicemail. And I felt just so isolated and alone. And I knew, rationally that they wouldn't create an office just for me. So I knew that there were others who needed that support, but it didn't feel like that all of the time. And so I think that's really one of the motivating factors for me to do this work and for us to be so visible on campus is to let people know that we exist and that we're here, and that we can support them throughout that process. I do meet with students outside of the center who are looking for a connection but may not be ready to step into our center, and so letting people know that there are places they can reach out to. I totally agree, Samantha.
Definitely. Could you, by any chance, give us some soft statistics or like hard statistics or whatever you have for how many people you actually service in your office? How big is the community there, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. So a weekly the weekly traffic for our center, we see between 60 and 80 students a week, and we can break that down by what they actually accessed. And so the majority of our students utilize the center space for a lounge area. We have a terrific, setup with some couches and some comfy chairs, and students are always in here hanging out or chatting or, watching movies or whatever they, want to utilize this space for. So that's where a large population utilizes. We also have a cyber center, and in that cyber center has 4 computers and free printing. So that's the next highest that we see out of those 60 to 80 students. So students who, just want to come in and print a paper for a class or need to Google something or, quickly or whatever it is, we have that available for them. And then we also have a resource library, and that's our lowest right now. And so students can come in, check out books and videos, peruse the resources that we have if they're looking for something along that lines, because that's a really important resource as well. We also do a number of outreach, so students that we're in contact with that may not use our center. So we have our speaker panel program, Visible Voices, and Visible Voices goes into classes and organizations and does presentations and shares coming out stories. And so those numbers are much higher than the numbers we see in the center. I should mention that we just moved into our new space probably maybe 2 months ago. So the folks are still, having a hard time finding us in our new location. And so I definitely think we'll see an increase next semester after folks know where we are.
That's awesome. I'm really excited because I actually start at Colorado State University next semester.
Yeah.
So I get to meet you. Jealous viewers. Yeah, that's right.
And it's on my list of colleges to look at, so yeah.
Yeah. You're actually thinking about CSU to some extent, right, Jaden? JJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my second choice, I think, right now.
Mm-hmm. Jaden?
Yeah, I thought about going there actually because that's where I was born, so I thought about going back.
Oh, that's awesome. So we might actually just end up coming together.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about Trans Youth Channel. We're just all over the nation, but somehow we just figure out how to connect in a lot of ways. Like we have 3 people from North Carolina, and we didn't know that until this upcoming meeting. So we're thinking about doing something there in order to meet up and stuff like that. It's really interesting how small an entire nation can get when you start adding in that online factor. I don't know.
Yeah, brings everybody closer.
So we are currently on the half hour. So I just want to mention to everyone, for Giving Tuesday, you are more than welcome to join us here on Google Hangout to state your dedication for your donation for Giving Tuesday to Trans Youth Channel. We actually want to make sure that you're able to do that directly. And if you don't want to, that's also okay. Any donation that is given through transyouthchannel.org/donate will actually find itself on one of these channels so that you can publicly show your support for a loved friend or family or loved one. It's definitely going to be a really big deal, and it's a gift that you can give for a very small donation you know will be used in order to help that same community. Trans Youth Channel is planning to use those donations for 2 main purposes. The first one being creating change, which you can learn a little bit more about by emailing us at transyouthchannel@.org, or you can go to Creating Change's website run by the LGBT Task Force, and that's creatingchange.org. The second program is actually going to be a support group program that we're looking to start online. It's going to be probably the first of its kind. I haven't heard of it before, but we'll be able to have closeted online support groups starting in 2015. But we need some startup funds, so if you want to provide a donation, you'll be able to do so. If you don't have anyone to dedicate, that's also okay, because we'll actually dedicate that donation to someone on the Transgender Day of Remembrance list, people who have lost their lives simply for being trans. We're currently with Aaric Guerriero, who is a mainstay. He's the leader of a LGBT office at Colorado State University. Definitely a really, really awesome campus, really awesome LGBT center. and we're talking to him a little bit about starting GSAs, having that history, and what it's like to be an LGBT individual on campus. So, Aaric, do you have anything to add on to that before we kind of jump into the second half of questions?
I just wanted to commend Trans Youth Channel for the work that you all are doing. It's definitely a phenomenal resource that I wish had existed when I was a youth and in my formative years. You really are changing lives and making a difference, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you. That's kind of a huge deal. JJ or Jaden, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just the fact that you're doing is awesome.
Sorry, let's start with JJ. What did you say?
I said, no, you're just really awesome, so keep doing what you're doing. And it's well appreciated.
Jaden?
Oh, I just said thanks for the recognition. I mean, it's great to hear that from people, and also that it's, it's really awesome that you're pretty close to us, so eventually, hopefully, I'll get to see you.
Absolutely.
So, one of the main things about your position is that you have a lot of experience as far as creating safe spaces on campuses, a lot of GSAs and LGBT centers. And with your history since like the beginning, since like 2000s and 1990s and everything, you've been doing a large majority of this work. So we kind of want to pick your brain about actually starting a lot of these GSAs. So what would you say to someone who's just starting a GSA, and how would you recommend that they go about it?
The first thing that I think is truly critical is finding at least one faculty member who can support you. It may be difficult, and they might not even be at your school, but finding just that one person, because they're going to be able to help answer some of the questions that you might not know the answers to. For example, they might be able to secure a space a little easier than you can. And some schools have a policy that they need faculty members to be advisors, and so finding that person before you kind of start that work will really make things a little easier for you. The next thing to do is to really kind of start talking to your circle of friends and figuring out, what do you want this group to look like? I think when you start an organization, you really have a lot of awesome freedom and a lot of opportunities to create something that you want to see happen. So think about things that you don't see happening, or that maybe things that you say, oh, it would be really great if our school could, maybe it's participate in the National Day of Silence, or I really wish our school would be more inclusive with their policies in terms of dances, or maybe you want your school to adopt a non-discrimination policy. And so start thinking about the big picture things that you want your organization to address. And then you can kind of start, talking to your friends about what that's going to look like, and, really start getting folks together to start formalizing a group. But definitely, I think if you have, some of those things that you want to see in place, that'll be a little easier than down the road.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much for those tips as far as that goes. There are a lot of also like major hurdles, like you mentioned, finding an advisor for your GSA, finding that local community and making sure that it is actually supported, things like that. How would you recommend that someone go about gaining funds for a GSA to run and keeping it going once you've established it?
That's, if I had to think the full answer to that question, I would not be in Colorado. I'd be on a beach somewhere, because I would be rich from that idea. But I think that's difficult, and it's kind of like any organization with growth of an organization. So it's finding people who may be freshmen who can kind of pick up the slack if you're a junior or a senior and graduating, and helping prepare them to take on the role. It's also engaging a lot of people in the discussion and helping people realize that a gay straight alliance or any sort of kind of group that focuses on social justice issues in a high school is not just for the LGBT community. It's greater than that, and it's really about creating space that provides education and provides support for all individuals. And so it's really kind of having those conversations, I think, and that's something where a faculty advisor can help with. When it comes to finding a faculty advisor, think about maybe there's a faculty member or teacher that you've had a really great connection with, or maybe you feel really safe in their class, and maybe they haven't necessarily said anything like LGBT specific, but you just feel that they would be supportive, or that you feel like you could talk to them. And approach it from that way. And I know, coming from a very small high school in Michigan was very difficult. I was harassed a lot and bullied a lot because I was gender nonconforming. But there was still one teacher. I actually wish I had come out to him, and I know he would have been supportive. And so just finding those people is really important.
I can definitely echo that, especially when it comes to building online organizations. Once you find that one person who's willing to be your rock that you can attach to, and kind of be a little bit of a mentor, not necessarily about LGBT things. They don't actually need to be hugely educated for them to want to learn, for them to want to create those foundations for you. So if you can find someone that you're comfortable with, that would definitely be a really, really great place to start. And sure, it might involve a little bit of education for the both of you in the beginning, but it doesn't need to be a fast process. You don't need to have a GSA done within a semester. You can just kind of let it grow and let the community come to you and then create that. Is that something that you might agree with?
I would totally agree with that. And there's some really great resources that exist for creating GSAs. And so I would recommend in Wisconsin, there's an organization, GSA for Safe Schools, or GSAFE. Their website is gsafe.org. I would highly recommend them as a starting point. And also, there are some really great resources through GLSEN, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network. Their website is glsen.org, and they have a number of different things that you can download, such as, what should a constitution for a GSA look like? What should a first meeting look like? Even how do I find a faculty advisor? They have all of that written and together for you. So I would definitely recommend those resources.
Perfect, perfect. We also have Karen, who's just joined us. How are you, Karen?
Still waking up.
Coffee and everything. Way to be over in California. So the next question that we do have is not necessarily toward Aaric, because Aaric, although you've been in multiple states, you might be able to give some pretty good leeway on this, but I want to put this out more toward our viewers and toward everyone else on the Google Hangout. What specific challenges do you think that you'd expect from state to state to state? GSAs are probably going to look different in very different states with very different issues. For instance, like here in Colorado, a GSA might be very interconnected. It's going to have an exterior community attached to it, while Baylor in like Waco, Texas, might be a little bit different because it's more internal and you have to start going outward. Can you give us a few insights on what differences your GSAs had from Wisconsin to Michigan to Colorado?
Yeah, and a part of that is also the time and where society was in general with some of these things. And so in Michigan, when I was in high school, absolutely no way there would be no gay straight alliance. They were participating in the Day of Silence for a number of years, which received huge community backlash. And so that still is something that's they're not very much farther than when I was there, unfortunately. At Central Michigan University, it was by the time I left, it was a little different. the organization had grown from a small group of probably 10 people to a much larger group of 30 to 40 people who were attending regularly. And so that was something that was a big difference. But they didn't have the local community support either. And so much like you were speaking about, Samantha, it was very much kind of internal, focusing on how to expand externally. In Wisconsin, it was different. There was some community support. The backlash wasn't as visible or vocal as I had experienced in Michigan. However, it was still, a lot of folks weren't necessarily willing to be out, and so it was still kind of finding that balance between supporting folks who are not out and support folks who are very out. And so that was a difficult place to be, just making sure that we found something for everyone. And here in Colorado, I would say that so far I've experienced kind of a little even advancement from that. I feel like Colorado State is very involved in the local community. Hopefully, there will be a community center back again. Fort Collins just lost their LGBT community center. And so that's definitely a big need here in the area, and for us to continue to reach out and do some work in the community. But I really feel like some bridges are being built, and so it's more of a larger feeling of support than I had felt in either Michigan or Wisconsin.
All right, awesome. Does anyone else have anything that they want to say on that topic as well? Because Trans Youth Channel is fairly international. Karen in California, and Jaden in Wyoming, JJ in New Hampshire / Massachusetts area. Do you guys have anything that you would want to say as to how your GSA is unique? JJ?
Well, actually, like, my old school GSA is kind of unique. I'm actually texting my teacher right now about it, but she's going to hop on later on today, I think. But anyway, it took us like 2 years to establish a GSA, and that still there's only like 3 people in it because that school is tiny. But yeah, so it definitely took a while. It was kind of unique as to how we ran things. But
Jaden or Karen, do you have any input?
I don't think I have the best input because I'm a little older, and I don't mean that as a cop-out. When I was in high school, they didn't exist. And when I went back to when I was first in college, they weren't around. And when I come back, I've seen them. I don't know how schools are with them. I really don't.
Also, for viewers, if you're not aware, Karen is one of our over 25 facilitators. In addition to Jake, Karen's planning to come back, but she's not currently with TYC officially. So if you want to know about Karen's videos, they will be on YouTube, and you can just kind of backtrack, and you'll find quite a lot of her. She's been with us for like almost the entire year with Trans Youth Channel. She's definitely part of the family, part of the community itself as well. So that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next set of questions. Aaric, do you have anything you want to add to that before we kind of come back to you?
I don't think so.
Okay. We kind of want to move into some somewhat controversial but somewhat fun to talk about topics as well. I actually came across an article, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to give it to you, Aaric, so that you could prepare. But I came across an article about a few weeks ago that a University of Wyoming student sent me, and it basically talked about trans men and non-binary trans individuals in feminine colleges, so all women's college spaces. And apparently, according to this article, a lot of trans men are being accepted into these with F on their birth certificates, on their licenses, on everything like that. It's very difficult to change gender markers in many of these states. And they're transitioning to become men, and they are taking on positions of like authority in these all women's colleges. a lot of the women on these colleges kind of have the impression that that kind of flies in the face of the point of the college to give that special environment of power to women. And it's kind of a intersectionality type issue between the LGBT community and the feminine community. In addition, we also hear from a lot of these trans men saying that in the very beginning of their transition, it's kind of like a massive, bigger version of the potty panic issue, where they don't feel 100% comfortable going to a male institution because they're not seen quite yet. They don't, quote, pass, don't really like that word, as that. So they feel comfortable in these all-women's colleges. The question that we have, and this is the point of controversy, is where do you think a lot of these female colleges should draw the line in regards to the gender specificity of an all-women's college? Can you kind of weigh in on a lot of those difficulties where you would be what you think it might be?
Wow. So yeah. I think that it's not an uncommon discussion. I think if any of you are familiar with the conversations that are happening around the Michigan Women's Music Festival and trans inclusivity, I think it kind of mirrors some of that. And so it's not the first time that some of these conversations and controversies are coming up, and I think the important thing that some folks forget is that I can speak for myself as a trans man. I lived for 30 years as a female in the world, and naturally I feel more comfortable in the settings where I had been before, and so in lesbian bars, for example, or in situations with mostly women, because that's where I had been. And so I think it makes sense that trans men feel more comfortable at a women's college, and I think that's also somewhat of an issue of safety. Many trans folks still feel uncomfortable and not really sure around men who identify as cis, and so it makes sense that women's colleges are where they go. I think that a broader conversation needs to happen around what does a feminist look like and what do women's spaces look like. I think that I think they should always be places where everyone feels comfortable. I think this notion of exclusivity really doesn't accomplish anything, at least in my opinion. And so I think that's a tricky question.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty tricky. There's a lot of controversy to it, and I actually did a few videos on my personal channel about this specific article. The other really tricky part to it is that a lot of trans women are not being accepted into these organizations because they have M's on a lot of their birth certificates and licenses and IDs, and it's hard for them to get into this women's space as well. So it's also kind of really tricky on the side of a male to female trans woman or a genderqueer going that way as well. Maybe we can get some input from the rest of the panel as far as that goes, as well as viewers. If you have a specific opinion on this, feel free to also message that using all of our already noted channels as well.
See, that's a very difficult issue because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, a part of me just wants to say, like, authority-wise, to judge by the gender marker, but then that would be kind of like, I feel like that would be very rude in a way, but I mean, it also depends on how far they are in transition, because I mean, that could be an unsafe environment for a trans man who is 100% passing, but their gender marker still says female, like that. I don't know. That's
So on the topic of, per se, you know, male to females going to all female colleges, um, I could see that as a secure place, you know, being male to female, but at the same time, I don't know if it really helps all that much just, you know, being able to fit in there. I don't, it's hard to explain, I guess.
Yeah,
do we
like
have like LGBT colleges or
that was actually going to be another question. I was wondering, as a launch on this, Canada has recently announced that they're going to be running a publicly funded school as a result of bullying and a lot of other things like that. It'll be happening in like the mid Canada region. I can't remember where in Canada it is, but they are making a college that is specific for individuals who identify as LGBT. So kind of like you have all women's colleges and all men's colleges, now you have a college specifically for the LGBT community. How do we feel about that? Do we feel that it should be necessary? I kind of feel like it's a larger version of trans inclusive bathrooms that are set completely separately from male and female bathrooms. But at the same time, there's a lot of complexities here because we're talking about a solid education. We're talking about sex education classes being completely different, things like that. How do we feel about that? And we'll start with Aaric.
Oh, I think two initial thoughts. Actually, it's kind of funny. It's reality because I had conversations with people about wanting to start my own institution that would be LGBT specific. I think that there are a lot of positives to that. I think that creating a sense of community, creating just having a group of people with shared experiences can be really powerful and very empowering at the same time. I think that I often feel like LGBT folks, or at least LGBT centers, are often kind of the last to come on board at institutions. So to have an institution where we don't feel like we're last would be very different and could create a very different atmosphere. At the same time, I think that we're losing out on inclusivity and what inclusivity truly should look like, and really creating a space where we're separating ourselves a little bit, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that aspect.
What does everyone else think? Yep.
Well, one of the things is I don't see that happening in the U.S. in the next decade or two. I'm not saying it could never happen. I'm saying I don't see it happening. We're still having fights over, just inclusion in this country as it is. We're still having fights over who can do what and where. I mean, they're dumb as all hell. Don't get me wrong, but we're still having those here. If we made a college just for that, people in this country would freak out and be like, they call it discriminatory, which would be like the weirdest thing in the world. It's like, wait, this is discriminatory? There'd be religious protests. You could see the Westboro Baptist cult out front, like with signs and stuff on their opening day. You know that anybody who went there is kind of marked. And if you're not in an inclusive, I don't want to. How do I say this? Like, if you're not in a progressive state, you're going to be seen as like you're going to have the name on your college or whatever. It's not going to be like Cal State San Bernardino. It's going to be this one college. It's going to be Queer College USA or something, and they're going to be like, nope. And they're going to and I hate to say this as somebody who has just been going through the hiring process, they're looking for anything to get rid of you. And if they know they're not able to fire you at will, there's a lot of places that won't actually hire you from the get-go. Yeah, thumbs up, Jade. Thumbs up, JJ.
It was a good statement.
No, I mean, really, the only thing is this, they're going to see it. It doesn't even matter if it's like Pacific Inclusive College. It doesn't matter. They're going to say Queer College USA. Nope. Throw it out and not even care. It's going to be like, you know.
Right.
And I
But
mean,
then why do we have women's and men's colleges?
you'd be surprised by how much those can actually help and hinder somebody who's getting a degree. If you're going through an HR department where somebody has been to that school or knows alumni, it might put you to the top of the list. It might get you kicked right off of it because they may see it as like, oh, this person is now a lesbian. I'm dead serious. This is not a joke. They'll be like, oh, this person went to women's college. They're a lesbian now. That's not a joke. I really wish it was. There are some really vile stereotypes on that end. Yeah, thumbs up, Jade. Thumbs up, JJ. Okay, thumbs.
Jaden, what is your opinion on this?
So,
I mean, I see pluses and minuses to this, starting with the cons, because, like Karen said, I mean, ideas will get thrown. I mean, your resume will get thrown out just because you do have this college put on there. Because not only that, but it's almost like how trans people don't really want to be, thought as, they want to pass. And so if they're not really, if they're possibly going to this college, that might possibly hinder their fact that they might be no longer passing, they might feel like, oh, I don't feel like I'm passing anymore because I now go to this college because of the fact now people know that I'm going to the college because I'm trans,
right. It might out them on accident. It might.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, one of the things is that I have to, because I'm a veteran, I include my DD-214 when I apply for places, and that's just your military discharge papers for anybody who doesn't know. And it still says David on it because you can't have it changed. You have to get either DD-215 or you got to go through this whole process, which is actually a really big topic in the trans military community. But it's so like they're gonna see Karen, David. What the hell? I mean, it sounds funny, it does, but at the same point, it's like, and then all of a sudden, it's like, it goes back to that whole thing. It's like anything they can do to get rid of you, and I hate to say that because a lot of HR departments are not looking for people. They're looking to get rid of as much as they can so they can get that best. And if you have anything on your record, if you have a police record, if you are trans or whatever, they might take that and be like, no. That there is an all LGBT college, it might, I'd say within a decade or two after it starts. So we're talking 4 decades down the road for the sake of argument here. If you have that on there, it's going to be like, oh, people like they'll just be over it, not give a shit anymore, and it'll be like, oh, hey, look, this person went to this one college, this person got their degree, they did it in a safe environment where they felt comfortable, and so therefore they'll focus on their studies instead of whether or not they're allowed to use which bathroom or whatever. And they're gonna be like looked at like this person's actually like pushed themselves. But if you
So we are a little bit out of time. I'm sorry to cut you off. We are a little bit on the out of time portion because we're supposed to be moving into Faces for Equality here very soon. But Aaric, do you have any closing statements on that opinion? And then we have one last question for you.
I don't think so.
Okay. We do have a question because it is, of course, Giving Tuesday. This is definitely a very important time for a lot of nonprofits, a lot of schools, a lot of other areas, and especially for Giving Tuesday, we wanted to give this to the community. So Aaric, is there anyone that you would like to give your dedication to for Trans Youth Channel?
Yes, I will be giving my dedication to somebody who kind of started my own process, or at least provided some role modelship, and I connected with his story, and it really ignited me to kind of deal with my own stuff and to find the courage to come out. So today my donation will be in the name of Ryan Salins.
Ryan Salins. That's interesting. I think, was he a pretty predominant advocate, or?
He is still, yes. He has a book out called Second Son, and he tours colleges and universities across the nation and does some really great outreach and education.
That's really awesome, and he was like a really driving force for you as far as your transition and everything like that goes?
He definitely was, yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, on behalf of Trans Youth Channel, in addition to Aaric. And Aaric, I really do want to thank you for taking your time out of the schedule. And if you want to hang out or anything like that, you're more than welcome to, but we're definitely going to take you off the hot seat now. I hope the interview wasn't too much.
Not at all. I feel very honored and privileged, and know that if you're looking at CSU, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to go the same for a lot of other colleges as well. Any college that you're looking for, feel free to reach out, closeted, questioning or not, to those LGBT centers. They're definitely very safe places, and they'll definitely hold you in confidence if you are not out yet or anything. Just get that information. Know that you're going to a very safe and supportive college, no matter where you do end up going.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Samantha.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Aaric, for joining us on Giving Tuesday, and thanks to Colorado State University for giving you that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Yep, thank you, Aaric.